All right, before we go all 2023, can we talk 2020? I know some of you are like, I don't want to talk about 2022 anymore. Just real quick, show of hands, 2022 for you, good or bad? You know, okay, all right, I'm getting some. How many of you can think of? Put your hand up as soon as you can think of 5 frustrating or bad things that happened for you in 2022. Okay, the speed at which that happened. Okay, how many of you can think of 5 good things that happened to you in 2023? Okay, now name them. Yeah, or 2022. 2020, people are like, oh, I can't do it for 2022. You do it for 2023. I feel like that's like we're in the used to like raising our hands portion of like, okay, I just raised my hand at this. And I think when we think of something good, we're like, oh, I'm sure there's good things. And they're like, what? And you're like, I got that parking space that one time, and like that was really good, and it was raining. And like, what was the negative thing? It's like, I crashed my car, and you're like, okay, well, these aren't like evening out good and bad things. And we're going to talk this morning about, before we lean all the way into 2023, we're going to talk a little bit about remembering and marking and being aware of, so that we can actually properly have the right mindset to move into 2023. You can see it from the slide behind me. The series that we're starting off the year with, is called Miracles. This is actually the theme for the denomination that we're in, Every Nation, all around the globe, starting not this Monday, but next Monday. We're going to be joining in with hundreds of thousands of people around the world doing a week of prayer and fasting. There'll be booklets that you can pick up. You're going to hear more and more about that. It's going to be all over our social media. If you've been here with us for years before, we've done this before. Again, we're going to be doing this again, and as Pastor Chill said, we're going to end and culminate that with all the things we are praying and believing for, is what we are going to be talking about and casting the vision for on January 13th, not January 16th. And so prayer and fasting's coming up. Mark your calendar for January 13th. And here's what we're going to be talking about in this miracle series. A miracle is an effect or an extraordinary event in the physical world that surpasses all known or human powers, and it is ascribed to a supernatural cause, an effect or manifesting considered as a work of God, a wonder or a marvel. Did God do anything like that for you in 2023? 2022, I'm gonna get it right in the second service. That was the cheesy joke, that was where I was going down. I think we can pray for and expect those kind of things in 2023. But do you remember any of those from 2022? Do you remember any of those for 2021? Obviously, there were none in 2020. And so it's like how, you're going up in a building and it's like the 10th floor, the 11th floor, the 12th floor, the 14th floor. It's like there's 2018, 2019, 2020, 21. Is there anything I'm worse at saying than the numbers of dates? Is there anything that I could be worse at saying? I don't need research. I don't need to Google this to convince you. It's always easier to remember and quicker to remember bad things than it is good things. If you have bad service, you are very quick. Actually, what studies will tell you is you need to have 5 to 6 good experiences with an organization that you have had a bad experience with to be able to even that out. And then, so what happens is that you tend to be so aware of negative, not that even it happens more often than positive, but you're just so much more aware of it that it actually begins to become the thing that when you look backwards, it begins to shape your perspective and your understanding on what actually happened. And so that's what we want to try to talk about, again, understanding how do we remember and celebrate and be oriented around the goodness and the faithfulness and the miracles of God. Because again, most of the time, people ask you, how are you doing? You go, good. Or you're like, oh, pretty good. Like the higher you go, the less true it is. People are like, good. And you're like, all right, good. You're like, oh, that bad. Come on, let's bring it in for a hug. Or then they just go, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry. You must be an Ohio State or a Michigan fan, because that was rough, guys. That was so bad. I'm so sorry. That was tough. Guys, I don't think we got a lot of horn frogs rolling around in here. I'm trying to commiserate, that was a toughie. That was a toughie yesterday. I mean, we won our bowl game. But when you actually stop and think, am I good? Again, your memory starts to probably be clouded and oriented around the things that are most prominent. Right. And because of those things, the most prominent things, the things that tend to float to the top, tend to be the negative ones. And so when you actually go, no, how are you really doing? You can, even if you're doing good, you might feel you're doing bad. Have you ever had that where you're going, everything's going wrong? I don't let people do this. I only let myself do this. When I go, everything's going wrong. And Kelly goes, do you let other people say that? I go, no, but it's me, so I want it to all be going wrong. And everybody goes, everything's going wrong. And I sit down and I talk, give me all the things going wrong. And I can't, it's too many. Go, give me all the things. And then they get to like 3 and they're like, I feel like that's it. But because it feels like the negative, that we feel like we're always in a desert. We feel like we're always out to sea with the storms and the seas ready. We feel like we're always there. Now, there are certainly times that we are there, but we are not always there. And even sometimes when we are alone in the desert, there is an oasis of God for us to have. And sometimes when we are on the stormy seas, there is one like a ghost walking out towards us to be able to calm the seas and to calm the storms. And so we can remember all of the bad and feel the circumstances and feel the weight of the bad, but is it the actual reality? We have to remember the goodness of God and not just our frustration. You have to remember to pull rocks from the river. Now, I don't have actual rocks in my pocket like I did have acorns. Has anybody ever heard the story of Moses, the Israelites, and the Red Sea? You ever heard that one before? That God had parted the waters so that his people might be able to walk through them, escaping slavery and bondage, escaping destruction and their old sinful generational ways, and go into a new place and then kill their enemies. But did you know that that is not the only time the people of God experienced a water-related miracle? That one gets all the animated movies. But it is not the only time that those same people experienced something. 40 years after the Red Sea. 40 years after. So all the wandering in the desert, all the complaining, all the groaning, all the quail, all the manna, all the striking of the rock once, all the striking of the rock twice, all that stuff. Moses has passed away. Joshua has now become the senior pastor, and Joshua is about to lead the people into the promised land. Moses was able to lead the people out of slavery and bondage, out of Egypt, but it was Joshua who would be the one who would actually lead them into the promised land. Now, to get to the promised land, the Jordan River, so I think when we think of the rivers a lot of times in Jerusalem, or you read them in the Bible, they're all up and down vertical. The Jordan River is actually a little bit more like this. And there's a little dip that which is right where they crossed, okay? So this is what happens. In Joshua 3:14, the people left their camp to cross the Jordan River. And the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant, which is basically a symbolization of the presence of God. So they're carrying the presence of God ahead of them. Don't try to go to a place where the presence of God has not gone ahead of you, okay? That's just my TikTok sermon. That doesn't fill up the 30 minutes. It was the harvest season, and the Jordan was overflowing. But as soon as the feet of the priests who were carrying the ark, carrying the presence of God, touched the waters, the river's edge, the waters above that point began backing up a great distance away to a town called Adam, which is near Zarethan. And all the waters below that point flowed on to the Dead Sea until the riverbed was dry. Then all the people crossed over near to the town of Jericho. All the people is somewhere between 100 to 500,000 people, okay? It's gonna take 3 hours after the service to get you all out of the building. There's only one Fucarino here today, so we have a shot. A little chance. It is Lauren, that's the... Look, if you've ever been locked in the building because, like Mason locked Lauren in the building one time because it was like, surely everyone has left. And that's why Lauren is always like, I am here. Whenever she's going to the bathroom, I am here. So I want you to think about how long. This isn't like, oh, something just lowered and they all went, ooh, we got to get across real quick. This wasn't that. This was tens to hundreds of thousands of people had to be able to cross the river. And they crossed to the town near Jericho. Meanwhile, the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant stood on dry ground in the middle of the riverbed as people passed by. They waited there until the whole nation of Israel had crossed the Jordan on dry ground. And so you're like, well, how big is the Jordan River? With the details provided above, based on the way that the Jordan River moves in and out in flood season, it was most likely 100 feet wide and 10 feet deep at that point in time. In 1854, an expert swimmer tried to make it to see whether or not this was actually that impressive during the harvest season and had to be rescued because the river was not only too deep, but the current at that point in time is so incredibly strong. People have swam a distance of 100 feet before, but with the current that they had to be able to get to, the person had to be rescued. But can we be honest? Does it really matter if it was 100 feet wide or 50 feet wide or 10 feet deep or 5 feet deep? If it just gets miraculously stopped so that tens to hundreds of thousands of people can walk through it on a dry riverbed, it's pretty impressive either way. It's pretty impressive either way. And what do you do with that miracle? Because it's one thing. Most of the adults, well, actually, everyone over the age of 20 who walked through the Red Sea was dead. Everyone who would go into the Jordan, who would cross the Jordan River and go into the Promised Land, was that the oldest possible person was 59 or 60 years old. But they hadn't seen that miracle in over 40 years. It's a long time. And a lot of them were probably told about the miracle and hadn't seen it for themselves and hadn't heard about it. So what do you do when you're in the miracle? What do you do when you're the one who's gotten to experience the life change and the life transformation? What do? You remember it. Next chapter, Joshua 4, chapter 1. When all the people had crossed the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, now choose 12 men, one from each tribe. Tell them, take 12 stones from the very place where the priests are standing in the middle of the Jordan. Carry them out and pile them up at the place where you will camp tonight. So Joshua called the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. He told them, go into the middle of the Jordan, in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulder. So again, a stone that has to be carried on your shoulder. You're not like, this is my stone. Also, not getting stones from the riverbank. Getting stones from the middle of the Jordan River where you could not get them, save for the miracle. We will use these stones, verse 6, to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? And then you can tell them. They remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the Ark of the Lord's covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever. So the men did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan River, one for each tribe, just as the Lord had told Joshua. They carried them to the place where they camped for the night and constructed a memorial there. What do you do when you've been through a miracle that God has done something in your life? You need to pull rocks from the river, and you need to mark the miracle. There was a movie that came out last year called Nope, and one of the lines in the trailer is, do they have a word for a bad miracle? Well, I want to ask that question in a different way. Is there a word for a good scar? Is there a word for a good scar? Because every scar you have, you kind of remember, like this one right here, where I have a little lightning bolt going through. And when I was in third grade, I had a bunk bed, even though I didn't have a brother. And I climbed down the bunk bed, and I fell asleep on the ladder and fell on my face. And then I got up, and I was like, oh, this is sticky, because of blood. And I went to, and there's this whole, like, you can tell the story. Everybody in my family can tell the story, just because I got this little scar right here. And you remember it. I got one right here where I was trying to climb a tree, and the branch no longer was a part of the tree, and was much closer to the top of my head at a violent speed than it was solidly attached to the tree. So I have that scar. I have this scar because a doctor took something out of my arm. No, that's not a good story. But if you have, like, oh, this is when. Now, usually when you get a scar, that's not always a good thing. It's usually from an accident. Some of you may have a scar of like, oh, this is where I had the surgery that saved my life. And you have that scar to remember. Some of you do this with tattoos. Sometimes you're like, it was just cool. And other times you're like, oh, I want this word to be like marked on me, because you want to remember it. You don't want, and it's not like if you wrote your child's name on your wrist that you'd be like, hello, Caroline. It's not like, this is not Memento. It's not like you're needing to like reverse time or anything. Like, it's not that. I never want to lose the slightest tangibility. I want to be able to transport myself back to that moment. I don't want to be able to explain the moment. I want to go back and be able to relive and find myself in that moment again. So I don't know that we need to be able to find the word for the bad miracle, but I think we need to find the word for the good scar. The thing that you have been marked by, the thing that reminds you of what was done on your behalf. What did God do? The bad stuff can always jump to mind, but to remember the goodness of God, you've got to make sure in your life you are pulling rocks from the river and building memorials, because it's so easy to be consumed by the negative and the wrong and the bad, and that, if you are following God in any way, shape, or form, is not the entirety of your story. Even if you're in a moment or a season or the course of your life where it has been the majority of your life, it is not the fullness, completeness, and totality of your life, and you need to remember and be marked by that. Because there's going to be a question that you ask that you have I guarantee you have almost all of you already asked in your life. We'll get to that in a second. Joshua 4:21. Joshua said to the Israelites, he reminds them, in the future, your children will ask, what do these stones mean? Now, I'm going to just pause right there as a reminder and importance to parents that that in case you didn't know this, you are the primary evangelist and disciple maker in the life of your children. And you're like, well, I'm just starting to become a disciple. They're ahead of me. Fantastic. I bet you can read better than them. And you can. And New Life kids and New Life students and what we do with TNLC is there to love and encourage and support and come alongside you and help you and shape you. And you don't know how to do all this. We're going to do everything we can to help you in that. But it says, when your children ask you. So I want to encourage you to know the fullness of your own faith. I want to encourage you to be able to answer, hey, mom, hey, dad, why do you, why do we do this? Why do we go there? Why do we give like that? Why are we shopping for Metropolitan? Why are we sacrificing for an offering for this? Why are we helping to go serve on a day? Why are we getting up on New Year's Day and going to church? Why are we going to church on Christmas Eve? Why are we doing those things? I hope your answer isn't because we always have. Or maybe that's just the first part of your answer. Because this is what our family does. Because this is who our God is. Because this is what our God has done for our family. So we want to help and serve and be a part of. And there's going to be seasons where it's like, baton handed to you, to TNLC, and you're like, I need you to run with my kid for a little bit, and then we're gonna run with it, and we're gonna be like, your turn, I am incredibly thankful for the way that the ministry has encouraged and helps to shape, because if you have kids, you know that there are times where your voice starts to tune down in their life, and for some reason, some knuckleheaded 23-year-old is just like, they're the wisest person ever, and it's like, they don't even put their shoes on right, but they're partnering together because they don't need to be their parent, they need to be somebody who can help in that moment. But please, parents, never let that be handed off. Let's run together and baton together. In the future, your children will ask, what do these stones mean? And you can tell them. This is when the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the river right before your eyes, and he kept it dry until you were across, just as he did in the Red Sea. And when he dried it all up, we all crossed over. He did this so all the 8 nations of the earth might know that the Lord's hand is powerful, so that you might fear the Lord your God forever. So here's another 2 things right there. If you want the nations of the world to know whose Lord is, or who the Lord our God is, then we need to first ask ourselves, do we have a fear of the Lord our God that is changing and transforming our lives? And when we see and demonstrate a people who are living in such a way, who are so aware of, who don't just go, fell off my bunk bed, had a lipoma, like do that, but I can step into these moments and I can live them, and I actually start living in this moment and this moment and this moment at the same time, and I become that person who is the amalgamation and the conflagration of all of these moments of God together. That what that looks like is a demonstration of the power and mercy of God around us. Because what you have to wrestle through, the question that I know that you have asked, if you haven't asked it yet, you're going to ask it, is where is or was God? Where is or was God? I think that's a question that we all ask. But there's different ways that we ask it. There are times that we ask that like this: where's God? Am I allowed to do that? Not like me, but are you allowed to say that? Where are you? If it's how you feel, you better be what you say. He already knows that you feel that way. He's really hoping that you can move to a place of honesty and trust in him to express the fullness of who you are. But I think sometimes when we say that, we're really not interested that much in the answer as much as we are in expressing the anger. And that's where it gets dangerous, where you don't ask the question to get an answer. Then there's another way you ask that question. Where is God? Where are you? Where were you? What's happening? I'm so lost. The Israelites are being told that your kids are going to ask this, and you're probably going to ask it. And what you need is a way to mark it, because the question is not a bad question. Can I tell you, if you've ever asked that question and you go, where is God? Like, that's not a bad question at all. I just asked the question to actually try to learn the answer. That's the only thing I want to encourage you in, not to stop asking the question, but don't make it a static question by which you are not actually interested in trying to find the answer. Because when you say it, you go, where was God? Well, here he was parting the seas. We tell that story over and over again. Where was God? Well, look at these rocks. See, he was drying up the river so we could walk through it. You go, well, where was God? Well, he was preparing you for the job that you wanted but weren't ready for yet at the time. Where was God? Well, he was helping you to find the people that you needed to be connected with. Where was God in that moment? He was busy removing idols from your life because there wasn't enough room for worship of him in your life because you were so consumed with idols. You were waiting for God, and God is waiting for you to be able to put those down at the cross in front of him. If you're going to ask that question, and you need to ask that question, ask that question. But what's the answer? Don't think it's a bad question or a wrong one, but ask these questions. Where was God? Where was, in 2022, which I want the credit for saying the right year right there, where was he in these areas of your life. Can you think about this a little bit? Where was he in faith? Can you put that slide up for me, Sam? Thank you. Faith. What happened in your faith in 2022? Did you start coming to church for the first time? Read your Bible for the first time? You got baptized? You sang? You raise your hands in worship? Served for the first time? What happened in your relationships? Some of you found new ones. Some of you got out of bad ones. God can be in both of those. What's God done in your life over the last year in your relationship with the church? It's gotten stronger? Has it been tested? Has it shown you things? Settled you? Some of you found one? What about in your generosity? What's God done in your heart there? What's he shown you? What's the time that you felt prompted to do something and you went, oh, no, thank you. We always had a joke growing up, well, we've been together that long, I guess we have grown up together, Kelly, huh? That when it was a special offering time, if Kelly didn't blanch at the number, then I didn't think it was high enough. So she learned to go I was like, I think we should, and she goes, and I was like, I didn't say the number yet, So when I text her what we should do for the Christmas offering, she goes, by the way, I did go, okay, when I saw the number first, so it's okay to go with. And I was like, okay, But generosity isn't always to the church. Did you find yourself prompted to buy a friend lunch, to serve people in a particular way, to collect something for them? What about general provision? And again, sometimes maybe I should have put provision before generosity, but I always think back to years ago when Kelly and I had a job I did not like and then had a child that I did. And my wife had $160,000 of hospital bills that I paid $600 for. And had I only seen things in the flesh, I would have complained that I didn't have a job that I liked. Well, God, I know you provided for me completely and totally for insurance, but couldn't you have done that at a job that I like? He's like, why don't you just eat the quail? And stop asking for it to be seasoned, What about your family? How'd your family grow? You guys go on any fun trips? Do you have any moments of grace where you just sat there and went, oh, this is great? Did it grow? Did it shrink? What rocks do you need to pull from the river thinking about your family over this last year? What about your work? What about your health? What about just joy in your life? Do you have moments of joy? Or maybe did you remember some moments that you need to cultivate that and have that a little bit more in your life? You think about it. And you go, maybe, I don't really think like that. I think more in terms of timeline. We'll get to that in a second. But we are going to get to that. We don't have to worry about the second service. So here's what I need you to do. Stand up. Mason, you can come up. Front and the back. Okay, so for communion, don't open your communion. I want you to come forward, and these are at the front two and in the back two, and there's pens and communion. I need everybody to get one of these and a pen and communion, and then go back to your seat. I got my pen, I need to get my communion. You guys didn't know you were going to need to stretch before this service, did you? Yes, I am aware that at the top of it says 2023. I am being made aware. Sharon, I just printed them. Do we have any more? The back? Purple shirts, you got any more in the back or no? Jay Sean? Yeah, no, yes, no? I could write in the back of my piece of paper. You guys can go ahead and be seated. I don't. We'll get some more. I want to read this again to you. Joshua chapter 4, verse 4. Joshua called together 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel, and he told them, go into the middle of the Jordan. Go into the middle of the miracle, in front of the ark of the Lord, in front of the presence of God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulder, 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We will use these stones to build a memorial to mark the miracle. In the future, your children will ask you, what does this stone mean? And you can tell them, they remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the Ark of the Lord's covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever. I think we need to take more time to take rocks from the river and to mark the miracles in our lives, to reflect back. We've taken some time lately to sit and have holy moments over communion, and I think this is our chance to be able to do so as well. We want to create some time and space and some prompts to help you mark your miracle. We've got some more up here. So Sam, if you can put up that next slide for me. We're going to leave this slide on for a little bit. Again, it's that same list from before, but again, if you didn't know the months of the year, there they are, which exist both in 2022 and 2023. At the top of this one should clearly say 2022. But on the back of it, there is an opportunity of what are the things I want you to even start priming the pump that you are believing for in 2023. And we're going to take the next few minutes and give you a chance to be able to reflect and do so. And then I'm going to come back and lead us in communion together.